Her phone wouldn't stop vibrating against the cup holder, the buzz rattling the cheap plastic like a trapped insect. The screen lit up again with her cousin's name, then her aunt's, then her brother's group text full of laughing emojis she couldn't bring herself to open. Mia gripped the steering wheel harder anyway, even though she was parked and the engine was off. A cold Starbucks cup sat in the console, sweat sliding down the side and pooling in the little rubber tray. She hadn't taken a sip in an hour. She just kept staring at the address on the paper in her lap, written in her grandmother's shaky handwriting, the ink smudged where Mia's thumb had rubbed it too many times. Her eyes blurred. One tear landed right on the center of the wheel, darkening the worn leather like a small stain she couldn't wipe away fast enough. Outside the windshield, a narrow house stood between two bigger ones like it was trying not to be noticed. Mia had been laughed at for inheriting it. Now the whole family was pulling up behind her, car doors slamming, voices already rising. She told herself to breathe. Then she heard her aunt say, loud and sharp, "This is it? This is what she got." And Mia knew she was about to be judged all over again. Mia Reyes lived in North Seattle, in a one-bedroom apartment that always smelled faintly like laundry soap and old takeout containers no matter how often she cleaned. She worked weekdays at a billing office for a physical therapy clinic, the kind of job where the emails never stopped and the patients were always confused about what insurance covered. She had a steady paycheck, but steady didn't mean safe anymore. Rent had jumped twice in 2 years. Her student loans felt like a second rent payment. Her car was a 2012 Honda that made a soft whining sound when she turned left, like it was trying to warn her about something she couldn't afford to fix. Her friends told her she was doing fine. They meant it kindly. Mia nodded and smiled and said she was okay because that was what you did when people were trying. But at night, when she lay in bed with her phone glowing above her face, she did the math over and over. If she cut back on groceries, if she stopped going out even once a month, if she never bought new shoes, if she ignored the dentist reminder again, if she didn't get sick. The week her grandmother died, Mia felt like someone had pulled a plug and drained her. It wasn't only grief, though grief was heavy and weird, like carrying a bag you couldn't set down. It was also the way death brought the family together like a storm front. Her aunts and uncles flew in or drove up, filling her mother's house in Tacoma with rolling suitcases and loud opinions. Everyone talked about arrangements and casseroles and how tired they were, and no one asked Mia how she was sleeping. Mia's grandmother, Rosa, had been the one person who asked questions like they mattered. Rosa used to call Mia on Sundays and leave voicemails when Mia didn't pick up. Her voice always had the same soft firmness. "Mija, call me back. I just want to hear you." Sometimes she'd add something small, like, "I saw the rain today and I thought of you," as if weather could be a message. At the funeral reception, Mia's relatives moved through the church basement with paper plates, hugging and smiling in a practiced way. Her cousin Devin talked loudly about his promotion. Her uncle Frank told the same joke twice, and people laughed both times. Mia stayed near the coffee urn, watching the steam curl up like it was looking for somewhere to go. Later, the estate meeting happened at her aunt's kitchen table. It felt wrong to talk about money under the same roof where Rosa had once sat and peeled oranges for the grandkids, laying the slices out like little bright moons. But everyone did it anyway, like it was a normal Tuesday. The lawyer was on speakerphone, his voice polite and flat, the kind of tone that didn't invite emotion. Mia listened as he listed the accounts and the small life insurance policy, and a few sentimental items. Then he cleared his throat and said, "And the property on Alder Street is to be transferred to Mia Reyes." There was a pause, like the room had stopped buffering. "Alder Street," Devin said, leaning back in his chair. "Isn't that the little thing?" Her Aunt Dana made a face. "You mean that tiny house by the freeway?" Mia didn't even know her grandmother owned a house. Not fully. She remembered Rosa mentioning a place once years ago, but it had sounded like one of Rosa's old stories, the kind with details Mia couldn't hold on to. Mia's mother looked at her with surprise that carried something else under it, something tired. Mia felt her cheeks heat. "I didn't ask for anything," she said, even though nobody had accused her out loud. Yet. Devin laughed, quick and sharp. "Congrats, Mia. You got a dollhouse." Dana shook her head like she was disappointed in the universe. "I thought she would sell that. I mean, what can you even do with it? It's probably full of junk." Someone else muttered, "Rosa and her secrets," and it landed in the room like a stone. Mia wanted to disappear. She kept her hands folded in her lap, fingers twisting around each other under the table. She tried to remember what Rosa's hands looked like when she held a mug, when she patted Mia's shoulder, when she waved from her porch. She tried to hold on to the feeling of being known, because right now she felt like a kid in the wrong classroom. After everyone left, Mia sat in her car outside her mother's house and stared at the lawyer's packet on the passenger seat. In the envelope was a key taped to a plain index card. Under it, in Rosa's shaky handwriting, were 4 words, "Go when you're ready." Mia wasn't ready. She didn't know what ready meant. She drove home, slept badly, went to work, answered calls, corrected billing codes, smiled at coworkers who said, "How are you holding up?" She said, "I'm okay," because it was easier than explaining the strange mix of grief and humiliation and curiosity that pressed on her chest. 3 days later, her Aunt Dana texted the family group chat. "We should see this house." Devin replied with a gif of someone opening a tiny box. Mia watched the messages appear like they were popping up inside her brain. She thought about ignoring it. She thought about saying no. She thought about how Rosa had looked at her once and said, "Sometimes you let people laugh until they get tired. You don't have to fix them." Still, something in Mia wanted to go. Not to prove anything. Not to win. Just to understand what her grandmother had left behind, and why. So on a gray Saturday morning, she drove to Alder Street with the key in her pocket and the address memorized. The neighborhood was older, squeezed between a busy arterial road and a line of small shops that had seen better days. A nail salon with a fading sign. A taco place with bright lights. A laundromat with posters about missing cats. Cars rushed by on the main road, and every few seconds the ground gave a faint vibration like the city's heartbeat. And there it was. The tiny house. It wasn't cute in the Instagram way. It wasn't freshly painted with hanging plants and clever storage. It looked like it had survived things. The siding was clean but plain. The front steps were narrow. The porch light was a little crooked. It stood between 2 taller houses like it had been built out of stubbornness. Mia parked and sat there longer than she meant to, her fingers touching the key through her coat pocket like it might burn her. Then her family arrived in a small parade, pulling up behind her with the same energy they brought to everything, like they were showing up to judge a restaurant. Devin hopped out first, grinning. Dana came next, her mouth already tight, scanning the place like she was looking for flaws. Mia's mother got out slowly, eyes tired, staying quiet. Mia's phone buzzed again. Another message. More laughing emojis. Mia stepped onto the sidewalk and felt the cold air sting her throat. She walked up to the door. She could hear them behind her, whispering and chuckling, the sound sharp against the steady rush of traffic. "This is ridiculous," Dana said. Mia didn't answer. She slid the key into the lock. Her hands shook, and for a second she couldn't tell if it was grief or anger or fear. The key turned with a soft click that sounded almost polite. Mia took one breath, then opened the door. When Mia opened the door, the first thing she noticed was the quiet, because even with the traffic outside, the house felt sealed off like it knew how to keep noise away, and the smell inside was clean but old, like wood warmed by sun and lemon cleaner used too carefully, because Rosa never liked wasting anything, and Mia stepped in slowly, her shoes making a soft sound on the floor that surprised her because she expected it to creak, but it did not, and behind her she heard her family pause there. Laughter cut short by confusion, and that silence felt heavier than any joke. The living space was small but not cramped because everything had a place and nothing felt rushed. There was a narrow couch against one wall with a folded blanket that had been stitched by hand, and a small shelf full of books, some with cracked spines and handwritten notes stuck between pages, and across from the couch was a little table with 2 chairs not matching but steady, and near the window there was a desk with a lamp, and a stack of papers neatly tied with string, and Mia felt a tight pull in her chest because this did not look like junk or a mistake, it looked like intention. Devon stepped inside next, his smile fading as he looked around, and he tried to recover by saying, "Well, it is cleaner than I thought," but his voice sounded unsure, and Dana followed, touching the wall with 2 fingers as if checking if it was real, and Mia mother came last, standing close to the door, her eyes moving slowly like she was walking through memory instead of a room. Mia did not say anything at first. She walked forward, drawn by the desk, because on top of it was a framed photo of Rosa sitting on the same couch smiling, but not at the camera. She was smiling at someone off frame, and Mia realized with a small ache that it had been taken by someone who cared enough to catch that moment, and next to the frame was an envelope with Mia's name written in the same shaky handwriting, and suddenly the room felt smaller, because this had been meant for her. She picked up the envelope, her fingers careful, and she opened it slowly, pulling out a folded letter, and as she read her breathing changed because Rosa's words were simple and direct, saying she bought the house years ago when she needed a place that did not ask too much from her, and that she kept it because it taught her how little a person really needed to feel steady, and she wrote that she saw Mia struggling not loudly but quietly, and that quiet struggle deserved a quiet gift, and Mia had to stop reading for a moment because her eyes burned. Behind her Dana was opening cabinets, saying, "There is actually storage here," and Devon had moved to the window looking out, and saying, "It is not as bad as I thought," and their voices were softer now, like they did not want to wake something, and Mia's mother finally spoke, saying, "I never knew she kept this place," and her voice held regret, not anger, and Mia felt something shift because this was not about proving them wrong anymore, it was about understanding why Rosa chose her. Mia continued walking through the house. The kitchen was narrow but clean, the sink polished, the stove old but cared for, and on the fridge was a magnet holding a small note with Rosa handwriting saying milk, bread, apples, as if she had just stepped out and might come back any moment, and in the bedroom there was a simple bed neatly made, and a small dresser with nothing on top but a lamp and a book, and the window let in soft light even on a gray day, and Mia stood there feeling the weight of her own life pressing against the calm of the space. Her phone buzzed again, but this time it was not family, it was a number she did not recognize, and she almost ignored it, but something told her to answer, and a woman's voice came through saying, "Hi, is this Mia? My name is Lorna, I live next door. I heard people outside and wanted to say welcome. Your grandmother was very kind to me," and Mia's heart jumped because she had not expected Rosa's life to still be touching others like this. Mia stepped back into the living area and opened the front door again, calling out softly that she was there, and a woman in her late 50s stood on the porch holding a small container, saying, "I brought soup. Your grandmother used to make it for me when my husband passed," and Mia took it, feeling warmth through the plastic, and something else, warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. They sat at the small table while the family hovered, unsure of their place now, and Lorna talked about Rosa, how she volunteered at the library, how she listened more than she spoke, how she liked this house because it did not pretend to be more than it was, and Mia listened, feeling pieces of her grandmother fall into place like a puzzle she never knew she was holding, and she realized this house was not just walls, it was proof that a quiet life could still leave marks. When the family finally stepped outside again, the laughter did not come back. Instead there was an awkward respect, and Dana said, "Well, I guess it is something," and Devon shrugged, saying, "You could do worse," and Mia's mother hugged her longer than usual, whispering, "I am glad she left it to you," and for the first time Mia believed it too. After they left, Mia stayed sitting at the table with the soup untouched, looking around the small room, and she felt resistance rise because accepting this meant accepting change, and change meant risk and responsibility and fear, but it also meant a chance to breathe without counting every dollar every night, and she thought about Rosa's words about quiet gifts, and Mia knew this connection was not magic, it was human, and that made it stronger. Mia came back to the tiny house alone a few days later when the street was quieter and the shops nearby were just opening their lights, and she parked in the same spot, feeling her chest tighten the same way it always did before she faced something she could not walk away from, and the key felt heavier now because it did not just open a door, it opened a decision. Inside the house the silence felt different without her family voices filling it, and she noticed small things she had missed before, like how the floor near the window was worn smooth from years of footsteps, and how the couch dipped slightly in the middle from someone always sitting in the same place, and those details made the space feel lived in, not staged, and that made her uneasy because lived in meant expectations. She set her bag down and sat at the desk again, pulling the stack of papers closer, and this time she untied the string slowly because she knew once she started she could not pretend anymore, and inside were notes, receipts, old utility bills, and a small notebook, and as she flipped through it, she realized Rosa had kept careful track of everything, not because she was rich, but because she was careful, and Mia felt a familiar shame because she often avoided her own numbers, letting them sit unopened on the kitchen counter until anxiety made her tear them open all at once. Mia opened the notebook and saw Rosa handwriting filling the pages with short entries about days and expenses and small thoughts like, today, I fixed the sink myself, or the traffic was loud, but the house stayed calm, and mixed between those were notes about Mia, things like Mia sounded tired on the phone, or Mia is working too hard again, and Mia felt exposed in a way that made her throat tighten because she had not realized how seen she had been. She walked through the house again, this time slower, and her thoughts started to crowd in, asking questions she had avoided, like, could she actually live here, and what would it mean to leave her apartment, and what if something went wrong, and what if she failed and had to explain that failure to everyone who already doubted her, and the idea of being watched even from memory made her chest ache. Her phone buzzed with a work email, and she opened it out of habit, reading about an overtime request, and a reminder about productivity metrics, and she felt something snap, not loudly but quietly, like a thread pulled too tight, and she sat down on the couch holding the phone in both hands and staring at the screen until the words blurred because she realized she was tired in a way sleep could not fix. Mia thought about her life in pieces, the mornings rushing out the door with toast in one hand, the long bus rides when her car was in the shop, the evenings spent scrolling because she was too drained to do anything else, and the weekends filled with errands and recovery, and she wondered when she had decided that this was enough, and whether that decision had been made by fear rather than choice. She stood up suddenly, her body moving before her mind caught up, and went to the bedroom, and sat on the edge of the bed, pressing her hands into the mattress, and the simplicity of it all made her eyes sting because it felt like permission. She had never given herself permission to rest, permission to want something smaller and quieter, permission to stop proving she could survive discomfort. Mia remembered a voicemail from Rosa she had not listened to in months because hearing her voice after she passed felt like reopening a wound, and she pulled her phone out, scrolling until she found it, and she hesitated, then pressed play, and Rosa's voice filled the room, warm and steady, saying, Mija, you do not have to be brave all the time, sometimes being steady is enough. And Mia broke, then not in a dramatic way but in a slow, silent way where tears came and kept coming, and she did not wipe them away. Sitting there, Mia faced the truth she had been avoiding, that she was afraid of choosing herself because it felt selfish, and she had been taught in small ways that wanting less meant failing, and wanting comfort meant weakness, and she realized those beliefs had shaped her more than any budget or plan, and this house challenged all of that by existing quietly without apology. The breaking point was not a single moment, but a series of small realizations stacking on top of each other until she could not ignore them anymore, and she whispered out loud to the empty room, I am tired, and saying it felt like letting go of something heavy she had been carrying alone. Mia knew there would be practical problems, taxes, maintenance, learning how to manage a place on her own, and she knew people would still judge quietly or out loud. But for the first time those thoughts did not paralyze her, because alongside them was another thought, just as real, that she deserved a life that did not constantly push her to the edge. As the light shifted in the room and the traffic outside hummed steadily, Mia stayed sitting there, letting the truth settle into her bones, and she understood that moving forward did not mean everything would be easy. It meant she would stop running from what she needed, and that understanding hurt and healed at the same time. Mia moved slowly over the next few weeks, not because she was unsure, but because she wanted to do things in a way that did not scare her back into old habits, and she started by telling her landlord she would not renew the lease, and her hands shook while typing the email, yet when she pressed send she felt a strange calm, like a door closing without a slam. She did not quit her job or make speeches about new beginnings. She kept going to work, answering calls, fixing small mistakes, and drinking coffee that went cold while she stared at her screen. But something inside her had shifted, and she noticed it when she stopped staying late just to look useful, and when she started leaving on time without guilt. The first night she slept in the tiny house she brought only a few boxes and a pillow she liked, and the air felt different, quieter even with traffic outside, and she lay awake listening to the low hum of the street, and realized she was not anxious, she was alert in a gentle way like someone learning a new rhythm. And when morning came she made toast in the narrow kitchen, and ate it standing by the window watching people walk past carrying their own invisible loads. There were hard moments, of course. The water heater made a strange noise one afternoon, and she panicked until Lorna came over and showed her how to reset it, and laughed kindly at Mia's apology for bothering her, and said this is what neighbors do, and Mia felt embarrassment soften into gratitude. Money was still tight but different. She sat at the desk where Rosa once sat and made lists without dread and paid bills with focus instead of fear, and when something unexpected came up she handled it step by step instead of spiraling, and each small action built a quiet confidence she had not known before. Her family visited again a month later, not all at once, just her mother, and later Devon, who looked around and said it suits you, and Mia smiled without trying to read between the words, and Dana sent a text asking if Mia would ever consider selling, and Mia typed a polite response and then put the phone down without overthinking it. On a Sunday afternoon Mia found herself cleaning out a drawer and discovered another small note from Rosa tucked in the back, and it said, "Home is not about space, it is about how you breathe inside it," and Mia sat on the floor holding the paper, feeling that sentence settle into her chest like a truth she could live with. She started inviting Lorna over for tea, and sometimes they sat in silence, and sometimes they talked about ordinary things like grocery prices and old movies, and the way time moved faster than expected, and Mia realized connection did not always need excitement, it needed presence. At work a coworker asked how she was doing, and this time Mia answered honestly, saying better, and when the coworker nodded like she understood, Mia felt seen without having to explain herself. The biggest change was subtle and private. Mia stopped measuring her worth by how much she endured and started noticing how much she cared, and that care showed up in small ways like watering the plant on the windowsill, and fixing a loose hinge, and taking a walk after dinner instead of collapsing on the couch. One evening she sat at the tiny table with her laptop open working on her budget, and she realized she was smiling not because everything was solved but because she was no longer stuck, and that felt like a win no one could take from her. The house did not make her life perfect, it did not erase grief or stress or doubt, but it gave her a place to meet those things without being overwhelmed, and in that space she learned that quiet choices could still be brave, and that choosing herself did not mean turning away from others. As night fell and the lights from the street filtered in through the window, Mia turned off the lamp and sat in the dimness thinking about how easily people laughed when they did not understand, and how often value hid in places that did not ask for attention, and she hoped someone else might see their own story in hers and realize that sometimes the smallest inheritance could be the one that changed everything.